morning, everyone, and welcome to the Sunday stream. The stream I do on Sundays because Sunday is the day to stream on Sundays. Hope you're all doing well this morning. Hope you like the new intro as well. I threw that together yesterday thinking I should start better defining my shows one from another. So that was a first attempt. Let me know what you think in the comments below and in the comments in the chat. And speaking of which, who's joining me this morning? This wonderful Sunday morning? Mike R., Matt Barnes, Sean Uli, Funtime Bats, Rotten Corpse, Somnamnum Nation, K-Shol, Keever Dam, Brittany Holland, Swirl Blue. Good morning. Good morning to you. Good morning to you. Will it be a good morning? I don't know. But maybe we're going to learn something today. We're going to learn how to build an anti-racist organization. An anti-racist organization. Now, what is anti-racism for those of you not thus far indoctrinated or aware? Well, anti-racism is the current, cause celeb in being a good person. And just by the name alone, you might think it's a good thing. I mean, just anti-racist. Who would want to be anti-racist? Well, the thing is, anti-racism believes that racism is a universal constant, an original sin that everybody possesses. If you say you are not racist, you are in denial. And the only path to salvation is to be anti-racist, which is a perpetual confession. And if you don't believe me in that definition, trust me, I've heard it from the person who wrote the book on the subject, Ibram X. Kendi. But all that is probably aside. Maybe it'll be brought up during the course of this little presentation here. So what we have is a Zoom call, effectively, as far as I can tell. That lasts for about an hour. So as I do with the such things in the past, I will only go for an hour and a half or so of real time. And afterwards, I will decide, if we haven't already gotten through enough of it, if there's any reason to go on to a part 2 next week. Now, a couple of editor's notes first and foremost. As it is a Zoom call, though I have done my best to clean up and boost the audio, since every person's webcam is different, your mileage may vary as we go forward in the sound quality. Secondly, I have made one small edit from the video, and that was about a minute's worth of time right at the beginning, where the person introducing the stream goes over some organizational, promotional stuff that has nothing to do with the actual content of the panel discussion. So if you'd like to see the whole thing in its entirety, okay, redundancy for Department of Redundancy, links in the description below. But otherwise, I'll be looking at a unaltered presentation. I'll find my words this morning, I swear. A couple other hellos before I proceed. P-Dog, hello. Mike Savage, Blarg. Angela Arriaga. Jamie Melquist. Zalbla, the original Shroom. Good morning to you all. Dagger 3K. Good morning. All right, so per usual, I'll start off with a few seconds for sound test. You guys tell me if you can hear it, and then we'll proceed to learn how to build an anti-racist organization. And if my video that I posted earlier this week says anything about such endeavors, it should be a very interesting journey.
I would like to introduce you all to Diana Peixoto.
Okay, y'all hear that? I'd like to introduce you to Diana Peixoto, I think it was. Let me know if you heard that. Deco, good morning. Let's see. Viror of Ashmedai, good morning. Hope Phoebe's doing well. All right, everybody hears that? Let's go.
President of Dentraline, as our moderator today.
Okay.
Thank you all so much.
All right.
Hello and welcome. We're so delighted to have this conversation with you today.
I am as delighted as you are to have this conversation, except it's not much of a conversation, more like a lecture. Mike R., thank you so much. Ahem. Hi, Scribelight. Hi, Mike R. Okay, then.
Today, in the interest of time, so that we can get to the heart of our conversation, I'll introduce our panelists.
Thank you.
First, we have Gimelda Carvello from Wayside, where she serves as the Vice President of People and Culture, as well as the Chief Diversity Officer, and she oversees the newly formed Wayside Equity Training Center.
Ooh, Chief Diversity Officers. Those are my favorite.
Amy Hogarth is also with Wayside, where she serves as the Director of Recruitment and Inclusion and a key member of the Equity Training Center team.
Every time I hear the name Hogarth, I cannot help but think of the Iron Giant. And when I think of the Iron Giant, I start tearing up a little bit.
And then finally, Kelly Chun, who is the principal of Kelly Chun and Associates, a long-standing communications consultancy focusing on multicultural communications and cause-related marketing.
Oh boy.
So with that, we will begin our conversation today. We do encourage you to add questions into the chat or the Q&A, and we will integrate them as we go along in our conversation. That's what creates a lively discussion.
Boy, oh boy. I wish I had been there live to watch this. That would have been something. Something like nothing I said would probably have gotten on the air, but either way.
For our panelists. But Kimel, I'll start with you this morning. We have boldly entitled our panel today, How to Be an Anti-Racist Organization. So let's start with a foundation setting question. What does it mean to be an anti-racist organization?
Oh, I am glad. Okay, so oftentimes I don't see this in presentations. Those of you that have watched my channel for quite a while, what do I almost always ask for? The two top things I always ask for: define your terms and give me an active example. I couldn't possibly count how many times those words or the equitable have come out of my mouth over the last 4.5 years, if not the last 2. So I'm glad that she's asked at the top that we define our terms. Of course, the burning question is, will we actually receive a definition or a bunch of couched language? We'll find out momentarily. Thank you, tall person. Hoy, y'all. Can't watch live. We'll watch in full later. Happy Sacrifice Our Wants for Others' Needs Sunday. Huh. I had never heard of that one before. It's a long title. I'll have to think on that one on this Sunday. Thank you, tall person, very much. Wants over someone's needs. All right. So what is the definition of an anti-racist organization?
Well, being an anti-racist organization is really about actively integrating the work of opposing racism and really all forms of bigotry into the fabric of the organization as a whole. And
weaving of opposition to racism and bigotry into the organization as a whole. Okay. I guess that is about as obvious a definition as you could come up with.
This means changes in culture as well as structure and the institutions that are part of your organization. And then with that internal work, then being able to push that out externally into the impact that you have in the community.
Okay, so I guess my first thought is, does that then require a presumption that the existing cultures / systems in any, let's say, pristine organization not yet overtaken by an anti-racist agenda is then inherently racist? I mean, can you be an organization that is not racist unless you have declared yourself anti-racist and show active, participation in such? Or do you just come at the beginning and say, well, any organization that doesn't say they're anti-racist obviously is and needs help? Something like that. That's what something like that makes me think of. Thank you again, Mike R. Such brave creatures. I don't know yet. Are they brave? Well, bravery depends on actions. Let's see what kind of actions they suggest other people take. Also, good morning, the Asia Research Directorate and Lexi Mads and Gunfox61. Nobody, not me. Good morning.
And so it's more than just putting out a statement, stating your values or condemning some kind of action or event that happens in the public. It's about actually literally doing structural change and work to actively work against the systems of racism and oppression that exists out in the world.
Okay, so You're working against the systems of oppression and racism that exist out in the world. Okay, so your organization has to become an activist. You know how they talk about how organizations, if you actually did a psychological analysis of a corporation, you'd end up like, essentially assessing a psychopath, that kind of thing. So your organization as an entity in and of itself needs to become an activist against outside forces. Okay. Again, I'll be curious to know specifically what structural changes need to take place to turn an organization from, I guess, ambiguously racist or not, to actively anti-racist. Because just saying changes is one thing. Telling us what they are is the other. Now, thank you, X-Bubba Hotep. Why does it seem these people's jobs are to say something without saying anything? Well, each presentation is its own thing. Each individual is their own person. So they've got an hour. They've got a lot of real estate to work with here, unlike, say, a TEDx where there's only about 10, 15 minutes or so. So hopefully amongst the group, we'll hear some specifics. Fingers crossed. Knock on wood.
And we'll dig deeper into some of those topics as we go along. But Amy, with so many organizations just getting started on their work in DEI, perhaps they've focused on diversity in hiring, but equity inclusion work is still early for them. Is it too optimistic, too big, too bold to be striving to be an anti-racist organization from the outset?
I'm not quite sure I understood what that meant. DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Okay, I don't know. How difficult is it to be anti-racist from the outside?
Well, I'm going to say no.
No, okay, I got to hear the question again. I'm sorry. I didn't quite understand what the question was, so I suppose we need to start over again. Let's try one more time, and I won't interrupt so we can get the full flow.
Deeper into some of those topics as we go along. But Amy, with so many organizations just getting started on their work in DEI, perhaps they've focused on diversity in hiring, but equity inclusion work is still early for them. Is it too optimistic, too big, too bold to be striving to be an anti-racist organization from the outset?
Well, I'm going to say no. And I think I'm going to say no because it's sort of, to me, a little bit like, is it too big to strive to be a kind person? Of course not.
I guess it depends on what kind of person you are, changing habits and so on. But of course, again, it sounds like there's a presumption that unless you are doing what you guys say to do, then you are suspect as an organization as just being racist of yourself or contributing to such in the outer world. So is it my way or the highway? Because that's what it sounds like.
That doesn't mean I'm always kind.
No, it's fine. That's fine. You're right. Human beings are not one thing all the time.
Sometimes I'm not kind. And sometimes I behave as a white person in a way that is racist.
Sometimes as a white person, you behave in ways that are racist. Sometimes. Okay, well, I hate to tell you this, but being a little racist is kind of like being a little pregnant. So is this your confession time?
Because from the time I was born, I came into a world that told me that white people had more power and privilege.
You know who I hear from more often than not these days that white people have more power and privilege? Liberal white people telling me about white privilege and white supremacy and so on. That's where I hear it most times these days.
So that unlearning and that work is part of my work as a white person doing anti-racist work.
As a white person. So as a white person, you inherently have a belief that you are superior to others, and you have to work to divest yourself of that belief. So you believe in white supremacy, in which you are a part, as a sometimes racist. Got it.
I think for organizations who feel the overwhelm of how to be anti-racist, what I would say to them is just start. And I think just starting really is about taking action. One of the things we started to do about a year ago, and we have been at this work for a while, but we put out one anti-racist action a day for our staff to read. And
one anti-racist action a day. Okay. What does an anti-racist action look like? I mean, and by the way, my pause game is just on point today, isn't it?
it's literally always an action. There's always something to do.
Like?
Because I think when you make this an academic process or
an academic, sorry. I'm so trigger happy right now because I'm really waiting for some specificity. What do I want? Active example, specificity, define your terms. Ex-Bubba Hotep, thanks so much. If you ever need a new bingo card spot, admitted racist could be a good square. I don't know how often that actually comes up where someone verbalizes it in that way. So maybe we'll see. I mean, certainly patterns change and trends shift. So who knows? But all right, let me back up a little bit because I did cut her off when I didn't mean to.
one anti-racist action a day for our staff to read. And it's literally always an action. There's always something to do. Because I think when you make this an academic process or a thinking process, you're only a little bit in it.
Don't worry about thinking of it, guys. Don't think about it too much. Just act. Act without thinking. Oh, now there is some golden life advice.
This work is, I always say, head and heart work. It's both and we need to be able to think and act.
No. You said don't. It's not a thinking thing. Make up your mind, or maybe that's part of the problem.
And really use our hearts to figure out, as Dr. Hardy would say, how is our humanity and how are we moving our humanity forward in our.
How are we moving our humanity forward? I'm suddenly having flashbacks to playing Vampire the Masquerade.
Conversations, interactions.
Mm-hmm.
Terrific. And
that was terrific. Really? Okay.
this has obviously been a year and change in which issues of race, equity, diversity, inclusion, these have been topics that have been front and center in the business world.
It's been more than just a year and change. I've got 4 years worth of videos that evidence otherwise.
But Kelly, as organizations continue to move forward and perhaps transition what had been DE&I efforts into more comprehensive efforts to fundamentally change structures and do the work of becoming an anti-racist organization.
Aren't you just relabeling the same thing? I mean, diversity, equity, and inclusion. If you listen to the rhetoric of those initiatives from years back and up till now, and then you put them alongside anti-racist stuff, anti-racist and DEI stuff has a lot in common. You're essentially relabeling something, but making it more of a mission, much more of an ideology than simply some sort of like employment process or, selection process for HR. One is just an enhancement of the other, but they're effectively the same thing, except you're putting more of a moral twinge on it, I think, when you start going the anti-racism route, because it has become a religion, a belief that racism is a universal constant, that everyone is racist. And the only way to work around it is to admit it, which our second speaker there, our second subject, actually did. So I guess good for her.
Language matters a lot.
Oh,
How
yeah.
do we talk about this topic internally in a way that brings everybody to the table with some shared language?
Yeah, how do you bring everybody to the table when obviously you have to start from a place where anyone who isn't the right skin color is the enemy and is part of the problem simply on the basis of existing? How do you do that?
Well, thank you and good morning, everyone. I think empathy is a skill that organizations need to cultivate as they enter what is really a brave space?
Empathy. Yes. Okay. And I know I'm pausing all over the place here, but just to give a baseline of my understanding of some of the terminology being used. These days, saying that I'm here to teach you empathy or I'm here to encourage empathy is a way of salesmanship where you've already sold the value of what you're about to say before you've even released the product. Okay. Because if I preload any presentation I'm going to give you of what I'm about to sell you as I'm here to teach empathy. Empathy, one of the foundationary blocks of human civilization, one of the natural inclinations of most moral human beings, then I've already put a value on whatever I'm about to say. That what I'm about to say is inherently good, inherently a moral positive. And to counter that, to push back against it, would be unempathetic and consequently inhuman after a fashion. So I'm always a little skeptical when somebody starts out by saying, I'm here to promote empathy, because I'm not quite sure if the wrapping matches what's underneath the paper. That was probably a terrible analogy.
And get a sense of how their employees, how their staff want to have that kind of conversation. I think it begins with an acknowledgement that it can be a difficult process, that it's going to be a messy process. And so I think that you really need to start with empathy and by connecting to staff to see how they want to proceed along this path.
Hey, staff, how do you want to proceed along with doing a, internal inquisition to find out anybody who's not going along to get along with our new ideology of anti-racism, which we haven't quite defined the process of yet, but I'm hoping we will get there. Thank you, Sean Uli. The work should be a bingo space. To do this work, the hard work of maybe. I mean, it's a bit generalized, but maybe. I mean, that is a phrase that's used very often that almost has a sort of religious connotation to it at this point. To do this hard work or the work of, etc. Almost like a missionary situation. That was
Excellent.
it. Excellent, real terrific, excellent. Okay.
And I think there is, at this moment in time, there's a lot of content out there about DE&I and anti-racism efforts. You could read a lot of articles. You could listen to a lot of podcasts.
Yes, you could, including my own. If you check out my content from over 4 years or so, almost 5 years. As of October 11th, it'll be 5 years.
And it might lead some organizations to believe that they could DIY their DEI.
Yeah, well, we can't believe that because there's a whole bunch of diversity, equity, and inclusion consultants that need a payday.
To use a phrase, and their anti-racism efforts. I suspect, Gamal and Amy, that you might have a different perspective on that. Can you tell us, and either of you could go first on this, what you see as the benefit of having outside facilitators, what their role is and how to use them well, and what challenges an organization might want to look out for if they are trying to do at least some portion of their DEI work in a self-directed way?
Okay, so you're asking people who make money off of going to companies and telling them how to be anti-racist what the benefits are of asking for outside consultation for a company to become anti-racist. Golly, is this just one big advertisement for services? Because it's starting to sound like it.
That's a lot of big questions. So, let's bring it apart a little bit, or just think about it in a couple of different buckets. I think there's a role here for an outside consultant to come and help give structure to what that process is going to be.
I wish you would give us the structure of what that process is going to be, because we're 7 minutes into this and there's no specificity. Hey, that rhymed.
I think, if any organization were going to embark on implementing any large scale initiative, most of the time you're going to reach out to an expert in the field or some kind of consultant to give you some structure there, some resources, and some direction on where to go. And that it's the same, you would apply the exact same logic to a DEI initiative or effort.
Yes, I've talked about this before. I worked in a company at one time where we had people come in because we were going to change our entire computer system. Their agents sat down with us to go over how we do our work processes with the current system, how they could work to emulate that in the new system. Yes, outside consultation for expert, advice, not an uncommon thing in business. It's true. Okay, and then?
And there's a part here where you want to have a check and balance, right? We all think we're nice people. And then
But we're obviously not. We're all actually racist.
Go out in the world and someone gives you some feedback that you weren't so nice one time.
You weren't so nice one time? Is that all it takes? One time? Golly gee whiz, how terrible a person must I be? I guess I'll just live in self-wretchedness the rest of my life.
And, we all think we have positive intentions and we don't necessarily know the impacts that we're having. And so it's really important to have somebody.
It's really important to have somebody come in and tell you how terrible a person you are. Because that's what it sounds like you're about to tell us.
Who's going to be able to hold up that mirror to an organization and the people within that organization. There's another part here too where you want to think about, there's multiple layers and levels of how you want to approach this work. There's a systemic part of this, and then there's individual work that the people who are leading that work need to do, along with the people within that organization.
Such as?
And those levels require different kinds of help and expertise.
Such as?
And so, one of the things that we love about the Equity Training Center is that we do have strategic planning people, and we have people that are really about those interpersonal conversations, and we have people who are kind of in the middle there and things that more outside the box kind of things.
Yeah, generalities, ambiguities. Thank you so much. What does an individual one-on-one conversation with this work look like? How do you approach someone in a company, an individual employee? What is the introductory, interaction between, say, someone at your organization and an employee of J Random Company? What does that look like when you're interrogating them about their role in becoming an anti-racist activist inside an anti-racist organization? Anything?
And so there's an ability within Wayside to kind of meet people where they are at with that work and provide the appropriate resource to take it to the next level.
Corporate speak, babble.
And so when you are, trying to kind of, and I agree, so many great podcasts, articles, and books that inform us as well. And
like mine.
The work that we're doing. But the question is how do you string that all together into something that isn't just one small immediate action, but that there isn't anything to follow up with?
What? Here's the word of the day, everyone. Pablum. P-A-B-L-U-M. Let's expand our vocabularies today. Pablum. Nonsense speak. Boring, unproductive nonsense. That's not the dictionary definition, but I think I'm pretty close. No, I don't know. No, I don't know. You're the expert here. Don't ask me or the presumptive audience a question of accuracy. That's not how this works.
So I think there's another person in Massachusetts who's famous for making a plan. And I think of Gamel as being our person who's also famous for making a plan. And
who's famous in Massachusetts for making a plan? No, maybe that reference went, I mean, obviously went completely over my head. If she's making some obvious Massachusetts reference, then I've missed it. Okay.
And so really what we did is we made a start by making a plan.
Oh, wow. What an innovative notion.
And our plan has 5 things on it.
Oh, a list. Oh boy. Okay. Specificity. What's on the list?
That we really focus on.
Yes.
And these are the 5 tenets we think an
Okay.
anti-racist organization would have.
Okay.
And we're going to tell you what they are. Don't worry.
Well, tell you what, given how things have gone thus far, I have worried somewhat.
The first one, though, is building trust.
Building trust. Okay. So this is a trust me story or a confidence game?
And so somebody in here is saying, can you give me an actual example of a daily to-do?
Yes. Oh, okay. Now, I wasn't in the chat, but if there was someone in the chat that actually asked for an example, whoever you are out there in internet land, thank you. Let's see what she says.
One of the things is all the ways we build trust with our employees. Something that I had to learn the hard way as a person who had supervised folks is I thought I had a strong supervision relationship with people who reported to me, and I thought they would just tell me everything, but they don't, right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. How often do you engage with people? What's your attitude towards them? Yeah, it does show a lack of leadership ability and attention if people are keeping secrets from you that are relevant to the workplace, I suppose. Is that part of anti-racism work?
Right. And so the reason people don't is because of power and how power impedes and impacts our relationships and how we can make power more transparent to make it something we can have a conversation about.
No. I mean, certainly there are power dynamics in business and in supervisors and employees and subordinates and such, but do you possess the interpersonal skills yourself? Don't blame your job or your title on your inability to connect with your subordinates. That's on you. Maybe I'm being a little testy here, but I have a feeling someone's trying to dodge responsibilities here, just a little bit.
And talk through how to have more equity and more equality. So that's an example of one action you would take.
There is no equity and equality in a structured organization. There are bosses and there are subservients. Oh, sorry, subservient. I mean, technically true, but it's kind of a, rejoin. Okay, so subordinates, boss, employee, that's how it works. Okay, now, there are areas where people should be treated equally, obviously. When we're talking about power dynamics, you're not talking about equity and equality. Someone makes the decisions ultimately, and someone else might suggest, but there's going to be a buck stops here situation. Most of the time, but, in an ideal world. So, tell us more about your business again.
But a more direct action would be if I have a new intern who might be on the panel. Hi, Gabby. And I'm supervising Gabby. And so what I want to do with Gabby is say to her, look, if I say something or if I talk too fast, which I do often, or if you miss what I'm talking about, please come to me and tell me about it. And then if she does that, I have an opportunity to again divide power and say, oh, see, this is this thing. I wasn't clear with you. I'm so sorry. Let me see if I can break it down in a way that's more clear.
Or maybe if you're aware of these flaws in your ability to communicate, you do the work to change them. I mean, certainly, everybody has their little foibles, everybody has their little neuroses, and so on. Some things can't just be changed. But if you know this, if you've been told this enough times that you have to warn someone about it, maybe you should just work to adjust your own behavior and not have everybody else police you. I mean, why would you put that responsibility on someone who is your subordinate? It's not their job to modify your behavior or police it. But it sure sounds like it's going to be the organization's job to police everybody else's behavior. Maybe that's the lesson there.
So just that work is anti-racism.
Really? Really? Tasking your subordinates with telling you when you're screwing up is a step in the direction of anti-racism? Really? Okay.
Because it's saying, I understand that my power makes it harder to speak to me sometimes.
No. Who wants to take, okay, you're not asking somebody to do something on behalf of the company or their job. You're asking somebody to take on the burden of helping you fix yourself as a leader. So you're already coming to someone and saying, hey, just so you know, I'm an ineffective communicator. So if you don't understand what I'm saying, just come and tell me. All right, what kind of confidence does that put into somebody else? Right? You've already shifted the power dynamic by doing that. You've shown weakness as a leader. You've made your subordinates think that you are effectively incompetent. Why would they want to come to you to do your work for you on yourself? Seriously, this is your first example.
And I understand I can talk about my power in front of you in a way that you can then say, oh, we can talk about this. We don't have to pretend you do this annoying thing as my boss or as my supervisor, and I'll never bring it up to you, right?
No, you do this annoying thing because it's you. Your lack of communication skills is not a factor of your job title. Jesus.
So that's a point of anti-racism.
Okay.
Imagine how that would be, how that is for somebody who's a person of color.
I don't know. Let's imagine that skin color is a relevant factor. Let's imagine for a second that skin color has a professional weight. Okay. Let's imagine. Why don't you do the imagining for me, since you're the active racist?
Trying to say it to a white person, right?
Oh, yeah, because when a person of color has to say something to a white person, well, there's a problem there. Can you imagine the extra burden when that happens? Oh, man. Gosh. How do you handle that? What do you do as a supervisor if one of your subordinates happens to not be white? Can you give us an example of that experience? How uncomfortable was it for you to have to exert your power as their supervisor? You going to tell us?
We have all these rules in white solidarity that says
white solidarity. Oh, I must have missed that meeting. When is that the club you're part of? Because if you can't tell by my mocking tone, and this has nothing to do with your skin color, but at least as evidence of it, I'm not in solidarity with you thus far. I mean, maybe you'll surprise me.
if you're going to talk to me about my racism, you have to do it quietly and never with any emotion.
What? Wait, what? Wait. Okay. Let's back up. Okay, and right there, that pause right there, that is the campaign picture for, like, I don't know, a run for Senate, looking off into the future. Anyway.
If I say something or if I talk too fast, which I do often, or if you miss what I'm talking about, please come to me and tell me about it.
Okay, I went way too far back. Sorry.
Because it's saying, I understand that my power makes it harder to speak to me sometimes. And I understand I can talk about my power in front of you in a way that you can then say, oh, we can talk about this. We don't have to pretend you do this annoying thing as my boss or as my supervisor, and I'll never bring it up to you, right? So that's a point of anti-racism. Imagine how that would be, how that is for somebody who's a person of color trying to say it to a white person, right? We have all these rules in white solidarity that says, if you're going to talk to me about my racism, you have to do it quietly and never with any emotion. I say throw those rules out. Let's talk about the ways we impact each other racially.
Okay, so in the workplace, you want people, your peers, your subordinates, you want them to come out in the middle of the workspace and tell you about your racism. Is that what I'm to understand? That is the hallmark of an anti-racist organization. If someone thinks you've been racist, then just shout it out. Okay.
And be honest about it.
Yeah.
Terrific.
Terrific. Is there anything that isn't terrific or excellent? Everything that they say? Okay.
Amy had mentioned the 5 aspects of an anti-racist organization
Yeah, she mentioned the 5 aspects, but she only mentioned 1. I'm waiting for the other 4.
that I know are fundamental to your work at the Wayside Equity Training Center. Kamel, do you want to walk through those for folks and
Yes,
give them a
please.
sense of how that works in real life?
Yes, please. Okay. It only took, 12 minutes and 30 seconds. Are we going to get some examples? Please. Okay, so first is build trust by revealing you're a terrible communicator, at least in the example we were given. Okay, what happens next?
Absolutely. And I bet you as I say them, Tiffany will put them in the chat. Yes. So don't worry for those of you who don't catch it. So here's the 5 things.
Okay.
First, you want to create trust.
Create trust. Got it.
And I'm going to go over each thing. First, you want to create trust. Second, have courageous conversations.
Have courageous conversations. I did a whole video about the guy who was using that as his marketing title. Courageous Conversations. Oh God, what was his name? Was it Doug something? Oh boy. I did this video a while back on the the chancellor of the New York Public School District or system. Sorry, I'm getting my words mixed up. And it was about a story where he had hired 2 different firms to help the school system with diversity, equity, and inclusion. And one of the people he hired, I think I forget his name off I apologize. Anyway, when I did the video, I found a talk that he had done, sort of laying out his philosophy, and it was called Courageous Conversations. So I don't know if they actually violated trademark just now.
Third, increase social capital.
Third, increase social capital. Create trust, have courageous conversations, create social capital. Okay.
Fourth, apply an equity lens.
Apply an equity lens. Okay.
And fifth, measure data and hold ourselves accountable. So
measure data and hold ourselves accountable. Okay. I'm hoping either now or maybe in part 2, if I decide to do one, they specify what holding someone accountable looks like, because I've almost never heard what that means.
So what does that mean, right?
Yes.
Creating trust. First is an absolute, you can't do this without the organization having a sense of trust, being a place that can see itself as a learning environment.
Well, here's the thing. By bringing in a consultant to turn the organization into an anti-racist organization, you've already said to your employees, I don't trust you. You've already said to your employees, I suspect you are doing bad things. And now we're going to have this umbrella philosophy, making sure that you stay in line, whether you've been a racist or not. So building a sense of trust kind of falls by the wayside when you immediately tell your organization, you're flawed and I already know it, and we're here to fix you. Let's have these one-on-one individual conversations where we can assess whether or not you're part of the problem. I don't think that's how you build trust, but hey, I'm not a professional. Thank you, Keeverdam. Was his name Glenn Singleton? Yes, Glenn Singleton. That's what it was. Thank you, Keeverdam. Glenn Singleton, Courageous Conversations. Like I said, that was the name of his sort of, I don't want to say product, but sort of his speaking tour or his brand name or whatever. So Glenn Singleton was one of the people that Carranzo, was it Michael Carranzo? Former now chancellor of the New York school system, hired to increase their diversity and inclusion practices. And I think he paid Glenn Singleton somewhere in the neighborhood of like $250,000 thereabouts to do this. So, Yeah, it was something else. Thank you, Kiever Dan.
And how do we do that? We do it by having the leaders of the organization decide and set that goal and the intentions of becoming an anti-racist organization, and then communicating that out to the organization and then following through.
Again, if you're presupposing, or at least the implication is there by bringing in an anti-racist consultant or about to adopt an anti-racist philosophy, you are accusing your workforce of being at least passively racist already. Again, I don't know if that actually builds trust. So what does building trust actually look like on the ground?
You know, one of the things that we've learned over the course of this is there's kind of two different versions of people when it comes to trust. There's the person who just trusts freely and they give everybody the benefit of the doubt until something happens that they feel betrays that trust, and then you've lost them. You've lost them forever. And then something later magically happens and then the trust comes back, right? There's very limited amount of control that you have with that kind of a thing. And so it's hard to build a plan around that.
Again, if your first step is to make a passive accusation of wrongdoing, where do you build the trust? Or are you even going to acknowledge that possibility in this process?
The other kind of trust is trust with by being consistent and showing follow through on the things that you say.
Okay.
So if I say I'm going to be somewhere at 6 o'clock and I show up at 6 o'clock, you know, the next time that I say I'm going to be somewhere at 5 o'clock, I'll be there at 5 o'clock, right? And if you don't, then people aren't going to trust what you're saying.
Yeah. Reliability. Yeah. Okay. That's completely legitimate. Okay. So how does that apply here?
And so through communication with the organization is how you're going to be able to achieve that. And it's also going to be a lot of small little abstract things that you might not realize when you add them together are greater than the sum of their parts.
Like?
And a year later, you'll look back at the organization and you'll be like, oh, that's how we build trust. These are the ways that this is the action that I did that turns out later was the thing that created the trust in the environment, right?
Why are you asking me? I know it's a nervous habit kind of thing, asking right at the end of everything. It always kind of bugs me when an expert is speaking and asking me for validation. Okay, so you're going to go into this having absolutely no idea how to build trust and only in retrospect realize that you accidentally built trust and then learn from that. Why do I need a consultant? If you're okay, or maybe she's on the DIY part of it. I can't tell, but okay. But I'm going to assume the latter, or the former, I should say, just for fun of it. Why do I need a consultant if everything I'm going to learn about building trust is going to be a retrospective happy accident? What are you bringing to the table as a consultant if I'm going to have to learn from inadvertent successes?
And then what you want to do is, for us, we wanted to really focus heavily on having courageous conversations. And Amy can feel free to jump in on some of this too.
Yes, tell me what a courageous conversation is.
With the conversations. But for us, really what that's about is having a common language and the permission to use it.
A common language and the permission to use it. That's how you initiate a courageous conversation. I know it's too much to ask for an example, maybe.
And so for organizations, it could be a variety of different ways. It's group rules, group norms, those kinds of things. It's an shared understanding on certain vocabulary. For us at Wayside, we like the Validate Challenge Request model developed by Dr. Kenneth Hardy. We are an organization of clinicians and social workers. They love themselves a model, right? And so you want to do what works for the organization. And
you want to do what works for the organization. So there's not a hard and fast rule. Like, I'm trying to wrap my mind around this, but I'm waiting for the expert to tell me an example. Give me an example.
And the permission to use it means that there's going to be a permission to make a mistake.
Permission to make a mistake. That doesn't presently exist in organizations. I mean, admittedly, you don't want mistakes if you can avoid them, but you have to account for the possibility that people are going to make mistakes. But permission to make a mistake. Here's the thing about mistakes. They don't require permission. They just kind of happen, you know? In fact, they're not permissible in the sense that we desire them. That's why they're called mistakes. Now, if you're talking about, and maybe she is talking about allowing leeway for mistakes and not coming down on somebody like the righteous power of God or something for a mistake, okay. I can agree with that to a certain extent, depending on the mistake, of course, but you know, each situation is its own.
In that conversation, and the expectation that people will then grow and learn from that.
So if I say the wrong thing in a conversation, I will be corrected in the manner in which I am speaking so that I can reform my vocabulary for the next conversation. And this is what you want your employees to spend their time on. Language policing. Okay.
Mistake.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if you want to add anything just to that.
Yeah, I just want to, when one of the other things I would recommend if you were looking for what is an action to do is to have a way to start having conversations that make sense to folks. We love validate, challenge, request, and partially one of the largest reasons we love it.
I don't know what they're referencing here. Someone's approach or some method. I don't catch it when they're saying it. And obviously they're doing some inside baseball stuff here. So I don't have a point of reference.
That makes sense to folks. We love validate, challenge, request, and
validate, challenge, request. I don't know what that means.
Partially one of the largest reasons we love it, other than we love Dr. Hardy.
Dr. Hardy. Okay, whoever Dr. Hardy is seems to be their personal messiah.
Is the piece about validation. Because when you validate a person, it doesn't mean you're agreeing with them. It means you are trying to spend some time knowing what their perspective and their worldview is.
When you validate a person, it doesn't mean you're agreeing with them. Well, that's true. Okay. All right.
And we think that is missing from many conversations in the world right now, particularly political ones.
Again, can you give me an example? Even if it's a hypothetical, because, you know, any hypothetical could conceivably apply to any zillions of people. What does it mean to validate someone in a courageous conversation?
And so we recommend the idea of giving the alternate view a hearing and then validating and experiencing what you understand makes sense about that view.
Oh, okay. So it's kind of like what I do with this and TED Excellence and so on and things like that. I will listen to someone speaking about something which I have a presumption, or at least a suspicion ahead of time, that is something I might disagree with. But I'm at least going to give it a fair hearing in that I will listen to what they say, think about what they've said, and at least acknowledge that I'm not just letting it zip over my head and ignoring them. Okay, if that's what you mean, then sure. That's how you can have at least a respectful conversation or a respectful hearing of someone's ideas. Okay, if that's what you mean, then I understand.
And then the conversation can move to a challenge and a request.
Okay.
The other thing is having a model and a permission to use it gives people a way into these conversations. So sometimes people literally say, I'm going to have a courageous conversation with you.
Can you imagine anything more awkward than that? Can you imagine preambling that kind of thing in a company that has made an explicit declaration of being an anti-racist organization? Because if you're preambling something with that, you know what comes next. What comes next is, I saw you do something bad. You have acted incorrectly. You don't initiate a courageous conversation unless you're about to dress somebody down. So, yeah, you want to talk about trust and validation? I think that's probably the worst possible thing you could say as your icebreaker.
So you kind of know, you can get yourself ready, like, okay, you're going to say something.
Get yourself ready. I'm about to be criticized.
It's a little bit like I'm going to give you feedback, but
Yeah, isn't it though? Except it has a completely different connotation to it, doesn't it? Doesn't it? It's not like I'm going to give you constructive feedback. I'm about to tell you how you've been morally deficient in your behavior or thinking. That's the difference between feedback and a courageous conversation.
but a little warmer. And
A little warmer? No. Feedback is at least ambiguous enough that you don't know what's coming. Courageous conversation, I'm about to tell you how you're being a racist. That's what that says in this context.
yet the conversation can be rich. I think one of the pieces is to really work on being ready to have that conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, how?
Dr. Robin DiAngelo says,
Oh, God, Robin DiAngelo. Oh, we're pulling out the big guns. What does Robin DiAngelo have to tell us?
white people are bad at grappling with things.
Yes, white people are bad at grappling with things. This is true about white people. A person's skin color determines their behavior. Yes, let's keep pushing that kind of thinking forward, shall we?
And I think that's true.
Of course you do, because you're a true believer. You're a true believer in that you believe you are inherently flawed because of the inherent power you possess by way of your skin color. Oh, God.
And so to get a little bit more comfortable with having conversations that are less comfortable, that are less easy, and being really willing to understand perspectives that are maybe new to you.
And I want you to not lose the thread and get to the other three aspects of building an anti-racist organization. But
yeah, I don't want you either, because I'm finding this fascinating. As you go along and trying to explain yourselves, it's really something else.
there's a wonderful question in here
Oh,
about how you can move forward in this work of building trust and having a courageous conversation while you're also trying to repair some harm that may have been done in the past of the organization before there was maybe a full understanding. And how do you not let that sense of pain and chaos continue to marinate and possibly impact the organization's capacity to move forward?
okay. Now she's brought up something like, and I don't even know what it would be, but your organization as an entity or something did something terrible in the past. How do you repair the damage? Okay, so again, that's a bit more of an, I guess, direct example, if you actually have one, which they haven't given us. But okay, let's say for the sake of argument, you work for an organization and, okay, the first and most famous example I can think of from my lifetime where like an organization did something that on reflection was morally suspect was companies that, and this happened in the 80s, companies that either invested in or did business with other companies that were benefiting from apartheid, okay, in South Africa and elsewhere. Okay, so that is an active example. I could imagine someone coming in and saying, look, your organization knowingly profited off of the work of companies knowingly profiting off of apartheid, and you have to redress that in some way. Okay. And that can be a big leverage point, both in a moral argument and a PR argument for an organization. Like you have to give some public showing that you've learned your lesson, that you acknowledge that that was a mistake, that kind of thing. Okay. So I can imagine a scenario where that's the case. And if the employees in that company are willing to sort of, in the abstract, admit that their company was doing wrong, then that might be an easier sell for something like this. Okay, so I could imagine that scenario being a far more push open the door kind of process than others. Okay, so that's how I'm thinking of. That's the only, I'd be surprised if they gave such a direct example, but there's mine.
Gamal, can I take this one? Is that okay with you?
Yeah.
So now I'm going to sound like a clinician because I am. I think you need to take some space as an organization to talk about the pain. Maybe specifically, or maybe generally, it depends on what, kind of things. If there was just many things where people were unseen and unheard and racism was a norm.
Okay. I know I keep harping on this, but those of you that have followed my videos for a while now, you'll know that this is such a weirdly common element amongst consultants and experts and so on. This is their business. This is their vocation. And yet, time and time again, when presented with the opportunity to provide an actual real-life example, or even an abstract, hypothetical, but an amalgam of experiences that they've had, to actually give us something like, imagine if a company did this, and I've seen it before in my work, and then tell us how you addressed that situation. Why is it so difficult to drum up an actual real-world example? You don't have to use the names. You don't have to call out a company or anything, but you have to have some, right? There should be some real-life work you've done in this area that you can just pull out of your memory to relate it to what you're saying to the rest of us, right? Isn't there? Because, man, it is so consistent how there never seems to be.
You could make a list of some of those things and name them. And then I think you honor the pain. You take a minute. We have this thing of one of the things we do when we train is we take 1 good minute. And 1 good minute is to give us a second to just get ourselves ready to be in the training.
There's a lot of emotional preparedness involved in this, isn't there? It's like one big group therapy session, isn't it? That might be a red flag.
The other reason we take 1 good minute is to learn how to take a beat when we're in a situation where things are getting hot. I say a lot of times to my kids, let's just all take a beat. Let's all take a beat. And so what do we...
So you approach employees at organizations like you do your children. Okay.
What we want to do in this situation is...
Wait. Wait. How often is it the case that a courageous conversation at a company gets to the point where it is so heated you need to take a minute? Is that a common occurrence? Is that really the environment that, if you know that's going to happen in the workplace, do you want that to happen?
Is take a minute to honor the pain and the loss that happened.
Like, give me, God dang it. I'm reflexively asking it now. Like, give me an example. I have no idea what you're talking about.
And then you ask if people are willing to let it rest and start anew. And or what would it take for them to get there?
What?
So I think, again, white supremacy doesn't like to honor the past.
So you don't like to honor the past? I'm sorry. I'm going into that whole thing of like what you said before, white solidarity. So you can't escape it. So you do these things, right? Because you have a tough time grappling with things because you're white, right?
As evidenced by how we just got a national holiday on Juneteenth in 2021. I mean, I'm happy for that national holiday. However, the federal holiday. However, it took an awful long time, right?
Right. So that's white supremacy at work. So why didn't white supremacy stop it from happening?
So we're not, normally it's not a norm of white supremacy to want to honor what was painful and lost. There's just sort of a feeling of like, let's pretend it didn't happen and keep going.
If you say so.
That actually does not work at all. Ask any clinician.
Actually, the times that I hear more often than not where people ignore what's actually happened and pretend as though the past never existed is people who continually tell me that slavery still exists, Jim Crow still exists, and on and on and on, and ignoring everything that has happened since. I see that happen more so with activists these days admittedly, I don't listen to a whole lot of white supremacy. Well, I am watching this, so maybe that's different.
Or anybody, any minister, basically everyone will tell you, nope, you gotta spend a little time here. So spend some time and then see if people can get an agreement to find another way and another way of thinking, and include those folks who've been harmed
are you talking
in the setting
about?
of the agreement.
What?
So we also have a general mission statement that we are doing the work to become anti-racist as an agency.
So you are currently actively racist. I mean, do you see how that works? We're trying to become anti-racist. So you are already racist and you're still not out of the woods yet because you're still working on it. At what point are you just an anti-racist organization? When do you stop having to work at it? Is there an end?
So that's a decision we have made, and we made that with many core folks in our agency.
You said absolutely nothing about nothing. Nothing. Good Lord.
And the only thing I would just add to that real quick is to just own what the mistake was.
Yeah. Okay. Give me an example. What does owning a mistake look like in an organization?
And by showing the vulnerability and modeling that you're owning that mistake, that in itself sets an example and helps to build that trust.
What does an organizational mistake look like? Come on.
And just like with anything else, right? In apologizing, saying what you're going to do to address it, and then actually doing those things.
Yeah. Okay. That is a valid thing. Following through on your promises. Yes. Okay. That is a truism of establishing trust and showing you've made a change and reformed. In any instance, not just this, but we're talking about something specific, I thought.
We want to bring apologizing back.
Cue the Justin Timberlake parody right there. I'm bringing sorry back. Yeah.
We want to bring it back. We want a t-shirt. I know how to apologize.
I'm sorry. So sorry.
Right? We literally train that trait in our training because somewhere along the lines we got a story that apologizing was a bad action.
Who told you that? Oh, was that your white solidarity? Did they tell you that? You know, the white supremacy that you're totally not a part of?
No, apologizing is a great action. Apologize to your kids, to your partner, to your colleagues.
Apologize when you know you've done something wrong. Otherwise, take neither credit nor blame for things you have not done. So what are you encouraging apologies for, and by whom? Thank you, Chicago Mike. I'm sorry, I'm a racist and promise not to be one. That has been her message thus far, both personally and apparently as her organization's mission statement, which doesn't drum up a whole lot of confidence in someone who's telling me that they're an expert on building an anti-racist organization when they still have yet to achieve that end.
Just apologize. Practice.
Well, and there are some skills.
Oh, you're still here? Okay. Haven't heard from you in forever. I wonder if it's the white people suppressing your ability to speak.
To apologizing that have to do with validation and not making excuses. You know, I'm sorry if I offended you. Well, that's not an apology.
You're right. It's not an apology because offense is taken, never given. So if someone says they're offended, that's kind of their problem.
I apologize, but, you know, I was, caught up in something else and I wasn't thinking. That's not an apology. So you might want to just...
Well, what is an apology in that case then? If I say, you know, if I've got 5 different people talking to me at once and I snap at one person and I go to apologize to them later and I say, I'm sorry, I got overwhelmed. You know, I've apologized, but I've tried to explain myself. That's not an apology. That's not a common human event, someone being overwhelmed and needing a minute. Don't we just need a minute when things get heated? Is there not permission to make a mistake? I'm getting conflicting messages here.
Give an example, Amy, of what an apology.
Sure.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yes. Give me an example. We're only 22 minutes into this thing.
I'm like,
So I just had to do an apology with a work colleague, which was not a pleasure. I don't like apologizing because
You said bring apology back. Oh wait. Is this because white people have a tough time grappling with things? Are you going to tell us that this was difficult because you're white? Oh, please tell me this is because you're white.
because I'm human and I don't like to be wrong, and I'm wrong a lot, so I should probably get used to it.
Oh, you're human. Oh, it's a human trait. Oh, okay. All right. You're right. Okay. She's not wrong. Sometimes it is difficult to admit fault. Depends on the situation, but few people like admitting when they're wrong. Okay. Now, tell me, grown adult to another grown adult in the same panel, how does one apologize?
So what I did is I said, I did this thing. I named the thing I did. And the impact of that thing on you, I could imagine.
You could imagine. So you're assuming the impact on behalf of the person based on what you're apologizing for. Okay.
And I named some things. I think you were embarrassed. I think you were hurt. I think you felt like.
I think you felt like I'm a mind reader. So rather than allowing someone, or I should say, extending to someone the respect of letting them speak for themselves on the matter, you're going to tell them your paranoia over how they felt, you assume. I would love to know based on what factors in this particular interaction.
You were bothering me, and that I didn't, and that you were disorganized or didn't know what you were doing. And I can understand how that would have been your impression. And I'm super sorry you felt any of those things.
So you just listed off anything they could have possibly felt and apologized for it, whether they actually felt it or not. Okay. Thank you, Chicago Mike. Make apology great again. Yeah. Hey, and it still works. Yeah. Uh-oh. Who knows what you're really saying if you use that? Well, I guess it kind of is its own phrase now, isn't it? MAGA. Yeah. Anyway.
And
how did that go? Please tell us how that went.
Then the next part I said is there anything else about what happened you want me to know that I'm missing or I haven't gotten right? Can you help me understand anything else I didn't collect in my apology that you want me to hear?
Sure. Given the fact that you're in a leadership position of this organization, you coming to me and rattling off every paranoid fantasy you've had about our conversation previously diminishes my faith in your leadership. That'd be something. Well, okay. I don't know if I'd say that out loud, but I'd think it. Unless I was having a courageous conversation.
And then I have to stop talking, which is, of course, the hardest part for me.
I wouldn't have guessed.
And then after that conversation, the other piece I end with is
no. How did the person react? You're going to tell us the resolution to this, right?
I would like to continue to make this amend to you. So I want you to know you can ask me for something, even if it's kind of wacky and different, and maybe it's 6 months from now, and I will remember that I would like to do that as an amend to you.
Why would I want to approach you about anything if any interaction we have could possibly lead you to come running to me in desperation and rattling off your paranoid fantasies to me? That, again, I'm speaking for myself here, but if I was interacting with someone at work who was this walking on eggshells around anything and everything every day, the likelihood that I would want to engage with this person willingly would go down several notches at a time. Maybe that's just me.
And if there's something sooner or right now you need as an amend, I'm happy to provide it. So an apology isn't just the I'm sorry, it's the what you did, how it might have felt, listening.
No, there was no listening there. You were assuming. Good Lord. Communication is key, and you're just going to swoop in, dominate the conversation, try to cover all the bases and sound like you're a completely empathetic and all-knowing person, and then the other person's supposed to say what? Presumably the subordinate is supposed to say what?
And then what else I'm going to do to keep changing it going forward. Also, you can say it will never happen again, but only if you're sure it will never happen again.
How can anybody be sure of anything in the future? You know, short of some actual, like if I lose my right arm in a lawnmower accident tomorrow, I could assuredly say, I will never have my arm again. I will never be able to blow my nose with my natural right hand again. Yeah, I mean, that's probably an assurance I could make for myself in the world. As far as behavior goes, yeah, you're right. No, actually, she's not right. Well, she's right and she's wrong at the same time. Don't make that promise. Say you'll try to do better. That's about as much as anybody can ask, really.
If you're not sure, so like
and again, sorry, I know I keep pausing this. This is a grown adult responding to the question of a grown adult about the art of apology. It has nothing, absolutely nothing to do with racism in and of itself. But here we are getting advice on how to apologize badly.
I misspell things. I'm never going to promise I'm never going to misspell things again. It's going to happen again. So I don't say that. I can say, I will work really hard to not misspell your name.
Yes.
Right? I will work on checking your name next time. Right? But I want to be honest about what I'm capable of changing or not capable of changing, because that can also set up mistrust.
Are you capable of changing your communication skills? Because if you have to go to somebody and tell them you know ahead of time that your communication skills suck, that implies that this has been going on for some time and you haven't done anything to change it. So tell me again about establishing trust.
How's that, Kelly?
You don't know? You have to ask her. You're the clinician. You've studied this. What, you need affirmation?
That's a great process. You basically described a process.
You've basically described a process. Yeah, it is a process. Oh, getting an apology from that lady is certainly a process.
Yeah, thank you.
Gamal, maybe we can loop back to the other aspects of
Absolutely.
anti-racist organization, having talked about trust and courageous conversations.
Yeah, so third is increasing social capital. And
Okay. We got 10 minutes until I hit the hour and 30-minute mark. I'm at, we'll call it 24 minutes on the clock. I think I'm going to start wrapping up here, guys, just because I want to hear more of this. This has been so bizarrely, frustratingly entertaining so far. I can't even imagine what the latter half hour or so of this will entail. So I have a feeling that the social capital thing, or I have a hope, let's say, the social capital thing is going to be an involved conversation. So I don't want to like do a piecemeal thing now and then catch up next week. So I think I'm going to hold the video here. But for the next few minutes, if you've got any comments, anything you'd like to say, I don't know, name dropping, shout outs, whatever, put in the chat now. And then we'll close up here in a few minutes. Chicago Mike, is it too early for a beer? Well, it's 5 o'clock somewhere. Arc 210, let's circle back. Yeah, let's circle back. I got the corporate speak down. Some Namnyo Nation, validate me, senpai. Ooh, validate me. Fiercely. Parody Bear, people mispronounce my last name all the time. Oh, is it Bayar? I'm going to have to correctly pronounce your name from now on every time I see you. Père de Bayard. Okay, if I got that right? Even if I have it wrong, it's right now. Père de Bayard. I think we done for the Lewis and stay for the looks. Dome for the Lewis. I don't know what that means, Mr. Bayard. Or Mrs. Bayard. Or just Bayard. I don't want to screw anything up. Lexi Mads, cancel Google, get that trending on Twitter. My spell check doesn't know Liberia or Monrovia. Really? That's interesting. Okay. Kiever Dam, irate Bayar. Yes. That's probably the old country way of saying it. Frank Hubbard, Scribelight. My last name is in nursery rhymes, we all know, and people still pronounce it wrong. See, every time I see your name, I think of Dune. You know. Or I suppose Dianetics. I suppose that's possible too. Some Namnyo Nation, how do you think you have avoided this shit where you work on the West Coast? I think it's because I work in a relatively small company, so giant corporate concerns of image and such haven't ever really been an issue. And everybody all works in the same office, or pre-pandemic. And so we were all just one team. And none of this kind of stuff ever came up. It's like somebody came on to the workforce. They were there to do a very specific job. Because we all are sort of subject matter experts of our own, but our work obviously, interconnects because of everything. It just never became an issue. I can only recall one time where we had anything like a consultant come in and talk to us, but it was basically because there had been one complaint from one person about someone else's behavior. And so in an overabundance of caution, I think, management decided to have someone come in just to cover the bases, if you know what I mean. And that was about it. So some animation says Frank Herbert on Dune. No, I know it's her. It's Frank Hubbard, Frank Herbert, L. Ron Hubbard. That's where my mind went. I'm not saying that the guy's name was Hubbard. That's just like Frank Hubbard. I think for whatever reason, I think of Dune and Dianetics, and I guess just weird sci-fi books that start with D. What can I tell you? Chicago Mike, how to be anti-racist? Look at people by content of character. Where have I heard that before? Yeah, heaven forfend that philosophy, right? Let's see. Lexi again. Frank Hubbard IV had an actual board game going of getting the doggy bones. It was a counting game. That nursery rhyme is great, except for the poor dog. Yes. Old Mother Hubbard gave the dog a bone. Which, when Andrew Dice Clay says it, takes on a whole different meaning. Check your logic. I used to be called by my last name. Since I joined this community, I've been called by my first name more often. I don't know where your first name ends and your last name begins. Check your logic, no spaces. Unless it's like Che Jor Logique. I mean, I went Bayar, so I don't know, you tell me. Bruni, The reason Juneteenth is a holiday is because of the execution of Julius and Ethel Rosenberg. It was June or July 19th. That is historically incorrect, but nice effort, I think. Lexi again, check your logic. People call you logic and now they call you check. Well, I see now that, see, Lexi, that was the low-hanging fruit of the joke. I decided to take it a step further because here I aim for quality. And Renovescio, to think that if the great MLK were still alive today and working for an anti-racist company, he would be declared a racist and likely fired. Shake my head. Probably. Also, don't set aside the appearance of Martin Luther King Jr. in Fortnite. I am not kidding. Go look that up. That just happened. You want to talk about two things that one of these things is not like the other? Yeah. Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech in Fortnite. Just, yeah. Anyway. With that, everyone, I'm going to wrap that up. Yes, I will be doing a part 2 to this next week. I can't avoid it. I'm too curious to find out what happens. Also next week, if things go as planned, sometime that same evening, Sister Scribe and I will be doing our second public domain theater because she and I have tentatively decided that the first Sunday of each month will become the drive-in movie night. So keep an eye out for that. I'll try to schedule that as far ahead of time as I can, as soon as I get things squared away with Sister Scribe on her schedule. And look forward to that next Sunday night. But next Sunday morning, I'll be back here with another one of these for part 2 of how to build an anti-racist organization, where we will learn maybe the definition of social capital and how to create it. But with that, everyone, thank you again for joining me this morning. Appreciate you getting up with me, at least sort of ostensibly. Thank you for moderators. Sorry, losing my mojo here. Moderators, thank you for keeping an eye on things, even though everyone here is so well behaved. You have very little to do. And everyone who donated, thank you so much for your generosity. I really do appreciate it. Looking forward to seeing you all on the next stream. TED Excellence happens next Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, where I'll go over another wonderful presentation from Off-Brand TED Talks. But until then, well, actually, no, I take it back. Wednesday, boy, I got to get my schedule down. This coming Wednesday, sometime in the morning, I'll be doing my next review of the next episode of Marvel's What If, because that's just my habit now. I don't even know what the episode's about, but I guess we'll find out together. All right. I think that's enough extra, not the alien. Everyone have a good rest of your Sunday. I hope you're all safe and well, especially those of you in Louisiana. Please tell me that you are safe. There's a hurricane coming. You already know it, but, hope you're all taking care. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.